Welcome everyone to Coffee and Tools. This week we're doing the drill press. What we're going to do with the drill press was a project this week. Simple, basic table with a fence. Drill presses generally don't come with, well, they're sort of made for drilling metal or something, but they're great around the wood shop, and any wood shop, you know, should always have, you know, some kind of a nice drill press. This is an older 10-inch Delta. And it's a nice machine. I kind of like it. It only has 5 speeds up in the box, but the problem is all these drill presses come with this sort of nasty cast iron little table. They can come round or they can come square. I lucked out. I kind of like the idea that I do have a square one. So when we do the project today, we'll be working with the square one and not a round one, thank goodness. But they'll have slots in them, such as the square one does, even the round one. They're slotted. But you need some large oversized washers and some kind of heavy nuts and bolts to put a table together on these. But the first thing we got to do is figure out how we're going to get this table on here and just go at it from there. And you can go look at your own drill press and say, you know what, I'm going to do something similar, or at least use some of the basics of how to put this table with a fence together and keep a simple basic one. We'll get into a more sophisticated one probably later this year, but right now let's just make a basic one that's really easy. The first thing we want to do with the table here is you want to find center. So you're going to have to measure the front of your plate, or the big piece of cast iron that came with this monkey, and we're going to try to figure out where center's at. So you might want to just check an overall measurement, split it in half, and come back. This one here just so happens to land at 3.5. So, or no, excuse me, 3 3/4. Let's keep the numbers right, huh? 3 3/4, so this is center. So, well, how do we do that? Well, you're going to need one of these. Get a Sharpie, you know. Usually a pencil is the only thing I really like to have around wood, but in this particular instance, because we're marking on a piece of metal here, a Sharpie is a pretty good item. So I've made a little black dot, and of course, this is marking center. I really lucked out with this one because at the very back of it is already a center mark for the whole table that lines up. So from the center here back to here. Then the other thing you want to do is, and I've already done it, so I cheated a little bit, but I took a square and I ran up to the drill chuck here just to make sure that everything does in fact line up. Well, hey, we're back, and what I did was I found this, this is just a piece of scrap that was left over from another job, and what I did was made a couple more mistakes, because we all do that for some reason around the workshop, but if you can get some little sticks of wood, like I did here, I actually took these, glued them on, and stapled them while this piece of wood was laying on that plate. But you'll notice I also marked the slots out, and this is, the center mark was up here, and I had a center mark back here. So I lined this up so it's square to that table, and the table is square to the chuck of the drill press. Hi. What we did here was I went shopping around town at some junk stores, and I found an old wooden chair that was in really bad shape, but the lumber is hardwood, and it was in really good shape for that part. So I purchased the chair, took all the hardware out, and now we've cut some of the lumber that came from the chair. Okay, what we did here was I cut that piece of wood, as you saw, and simply took the router and took a little bit of meat out of here and routed across the width of this piece of lumber that we got from a chair. We glued it in place. Now you don't want to put too many screws in, but we did add 4 of these type of heavy wood screws to hold it in place from the bottom, and glued it in place. So now we have a little bit of a really basic but really easy, nice, simple work table this time. I've countersunk on the top. Again, these are kind of a boo-boo, but we'll see. We're going to get into some frustration here in a minute with it. So let's just see how we do with all that. This is now going to go up on the plate, as you saw. And with those fences, it can only go so far back, and then it stops. So that's basically what we want at that point. Now we still have this option. Of course, I have left it loose so it can still swing back and forth at this point. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to throw some hardware screws in this thing, bolt it down, and then we're going to have a look and see how we're doing. On another issue too, with the cast iron plate, I had to make, it couldn't use washers. The washers didn't seem to want to fit. So what I did was I took the chair, and of course we cut some more out of that, a good hardwood chair, and we made some little fittings that will go up underneath, and that'll give it to me. Now when you make these, you can see there's an angle on them. So that angle is because of the casting underneath that table. And what I did was I marked a right one, and of course we have a left one. And that tells me which side of the table that's got to go on so I can fit my bolts and my nuts in. So let's put that together, and we'll put these down through, and we'll put our equipment on, and we're going to take a look at the next step or the next procedure that you're going to run into here. Okay. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. There's the little pieces of blocks that I made, and I've got stainless steel. They're 3/8 bolts that are coming through, and they've got, of course, just some basic. This hardware, by the way, was just some stuff left over from another project. So once again, I'm sort of like recycling things. These are all some old screws, in this case, with some old nuts and some washers that were laying around. I didn't run out and buy anything. This stuff's just been laying and, you know, with me forever. So we cut these two small blocks and installed this hardware to lock the table on. As you remember, I put that little stick fence kind of thing around, and I brad nailed it into the table and some glue, and now the table fits nicely like a pocket. Just sort of slides right on, locks in place, and then you can put these two pieces here. So now we have a work table, but guess what? We still have a problem. So let's take a look at the next solution. And before we get too far down the road, this table here was exactly 2 feet long, but you got to remember this was scrap. So when you want to build yourself a little work table, you want to look around for scrap. It could have been 18 inches, it could have been 26 inches, really didn't matter. It was 24 inches or 2 feet, so it was like, hey, you know, it's a good piece. And depth-wise, same thing. This one here is exactly 12, again, because it was cut from a large board. This was just a piece of scrap, so it's like it's just being reused. This particular fence, same thing. This is, like I said, from a chair, so it's 1.25 inches thick. And you notice the height. That was the other issue that you might run into. I only went with a little bit over 2.25 inches for height. Again, you don't want this part here too high, because really you're going to come back and probably clamp blocks in here to block work out, so you can hold or build a small jig or something to hold something here while you're using the drill. So those are the basic dimensions. And the problem you're going to have is, like all of us, every one of us probably out there has a different drill press or a different type, style, whatever, and the plate's going to be different. So you're going to have to sort of work a little bit of that out. But starting with the centers and using rough dimensions like that gives you roughly. The other thing you want to consider is what you might want to intentionally do down the road with a table like this. So what I did was, when I made and came up with this size and this layout, I left 2.5 inches from here back to this fence. And I don't really need anything deeper than that at this point. And I can also tune it. And we'll also show you how to do that. In the meantime, a lot of people have these types of fence, including adjustable fence, which I really didn't feel, I just couldn't see the need at this point. Maybe down the road we will. But there is another issue, and I've looked at everybody else's online, and I said, I don't see how they're clearing it. I got a funny feeling they've got the same problem, but maybe to get around it. But let's take a look and just see what we can do with ours. What I've done here is I've sort of pulled I almost pulled it right off the bench. It's a little heavy, so I don't really want to lose it. But, okay, the table's bolted in like I was saying, everything's great. Now, we turn around, and I'm going to spin the table around so we can see where the problem's at, and you can have a good look at this issue. And what's happening is, if I want to go up or down now with my new table, I've got that. So I looked at some other videos from other people that have built these, and I see the same issue. I assume what they're doing is they're taking the table off, adjusting the height, and maybe put the table back on. Well, that's not really going to fly with me. I'm sorry. I've got to be able to just whip it up or take it down as I need it, and make some quick adjustments if that's what I want. What we've done here is I've traced it out with the Sharpie. I brought the handle up to where it hits, and I've calculated, estimated really, an angle as to how that handle passes through this area and goes around and around. So you don't need to say 90 degree off the handle. You need to actually sort of account for the angle that that handle's traveling in that circle. And the same thing up here. So that sort of minimizes how much wood I'm going to lose. I still want to keep my fence, of course, so that I can, you know, clamp my work or blocks or whatever in place. So we've calculated approximately how much. What we're going to do here, or what we're doing here, is we've set the saw up, we've locked it here, and we're coming in with the circular part of the saw here. What I'm going to do is the radial arm saw is going to come up to a certain spot. I'm going to put a block up on top and block it. Then we're going to run back and forth until we get all this line of meat out of here. I'm just going to take this chunk out. So I'm going to kind of work kind of slow. This is not normal, but this is a way to fix the problem. There's probably about 10 different ways to do this. This is the way we're going to do it today. Well, a little sawdust later, and we've taken the piece out using this. I've got a clamp up here to stop the saw, so that it can only go so deep to get the meat out of here. And of course, as you can see, I think we've done a pretty good job of just notching that out. And basically, I guess we'll call it a notch. It's a pretty big notch, but this should allow the handle to clear. So hey, let's find out and see if we've got it. Okay, we're back over at the drill press, and I've got the table fitted back in, and there's the handle for height, and you can see it clears really nicely, and now I can raise or lower the table without having to unbolt it or do anything else fancy. So there we go, and now we're back in place and we're looking good. Well, that ends this project for this week. So thank you for watching. It's a really simple, pretty basic item for a drill press. But if you're doing any woodworking and maybe even something else, you're going to find that a table like this is going to be really handy around a drill press. The way they come out of the box, they're just not, just not set up to do everything. So with this, now all you need is like a chunk of 2x4 or something and a clamp, and you can actually create a jig where you can actually put something in over and over again and drill a center on it. So right away, it's a very useful item. And hey, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next week. Meantime, have a great weekend.